crossover segment came about because people, well, didn't want the big SUVs. They wanted the sedan-like feel, so we had to get something somewhere in between. Then came along, well, the subcompact crossover, basically taking the SUV that we once know to be so big, taking it even smaller. Hey, welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Roberson. Now, there is a newcomer to the market right here beside me, the 2017 Nissan Rogue Sport. Now let's look at this vehicle and see how it measures up. If you look at the profile here on the Rogue Sport, there are some elements that Nissan definitely had to hold on to. The first one being attracting the more mature buyer. After all, they have the Juke for the youthful approach. This one has to toe the line, and where they do that is in the profile, delivering nice elements with chiseled effects, body color all the way around, a nice lower fascia, and I'll give you the reason for that in just a second. But overall, the profile is going to fit a wide variety of consumers. Second is keeping the SUV-like qualities, and as I mentioned with that lower fascia, where that comes in is in the ground clearance. This vehicle, nowhere near a standard sedan, creeping up to around about 7.3 inches of ground clearance, really making this vehicle feel more like an SUV than a sedan sitting too close to the road. Now, as for the overall numbers, this vehicle measures in around about 172 inches overall, wheelbase around about 104, which has been shortened by about 2.3 inches. As for height, you can tell it's just over about 5 feet with about 6 feet wide. At the four corners, you do have some options. You can go with the standard 16 or 17-inch wheel, or, well, go with the optional 19. That's really going to deliver a little bit more wow factor. Now, what I like is the new trend is getting away from blinging out all these models, again, with that bright chrome, but instead going with more of a polished look like we see here with some nice inner rim black accents. The Rogue Sport comes in three models, the S, the SV, or the as-tested SL, coming both with the premium and platinum packages, pretty much meaning we got all the bang for our buck. Now, what do you get with that? Well, you get the around view monitor, which pretty much means you're putting cameras on both mirrors, one at the back and one at the front, allowing you pretty much to get a bird's eye of this vehicle in tight spots. Now, does that seem overkill for a compact? Possibly, but I like the added comfort for knowing you can squeeze in those tight spots. The other one is moving object detection. Now, we didn't even know this vehicle had it until we were going down the road and the front sensors picked up a car ahead of us as it was pulling out. Notice it may not stop, alerted us. Of course, the vehicle stopped and we were able to safely go by, but it was a nice alert. Also is proximity entry. Now, this is standard across every vehicle, not necessarily just for the Sport here, but what I like is, of course, you can use the old key fob, does have the remote start, but what I like is the ease of ingress. Rarely do I get this out of my pocket. Instead, you press the button here to get inside, press it again, it's going to open all the rest, and basically makes ingress into vehicles these days so much easier. Even for a compact crossover, SUV, whatever you want to call it, it still has to deliver here at the business end. Now, what I like first off is the overall design. First, starting with a huge bank of glass, giving you a nice rear view out the back of the vehicle. Of course, it couples nicely with the backup camera right there front and center on the dash. Also is the roof extension, better known as this rear spoiler, allowing the air to flow over and, of course, give you a nice prowess here on the profile. Everything, of course, on this vehicle wrapped in body color all the way around. Again, the lower rubber fascia wrapping around to give you some better protection. Now, when it comes to cargo, what you're going to see is decent numbers. Specifically back here, around about 19 cubic feet with the second row up. Now, if you fold that down, it's going to creep into around about 53 cubic feet. And of course, that is split, so you can design it in different patterns. Now, one problematic area with any cargo space is really just the flat cargo alone, really allowing it to slide around. Now, one thing I found is that the carpet they use here is somewhat gripping, really held everything in place versus some slippery surfaces we've seen on other models. Now, what you'll find is this is kind of a two-tier system. These covers right here really allow some items to be maybe stowed under here that maybe you keep in the car all the time. What I also found is that you can lock this into place. What that allows you to do is separate the cargo into different areas. Maybe put something here, maybe like our drone that we set, and that's going to keep it from tilting over. Then you can put your groceries or whatever back here. Now, one thing to note, under all of this is a nice spare. No one expects a vehicle like this to be a powerhouse under the hood, but they definitely expect what you hear, that purr of an engine. They don't want any screaming, and they definitely want a gas conscious model, and that's what the Rogue Sport definitely puts under the hood. Now, specifically, it's a 2.0 liter inline 4-cylinder engine delivers around about 141 horses and 147 foot-pounds of torque. Now, what does that equate to on the open road? Well, just a little bit of boot scoot and boogie, but not enough to do 0 to 60. Now, what I like is this vehicle can either come in the as-tested front-wheel drive model, or it couples nicely with that ground clearance when you equip it with the all-wheel drive version. One thing you want to take advantage of before you climb inside is the remote start, because you definitely want to get this vehicle cooling down long before you climb inside, especially on a hot day like today. Now, what I like once I climb inside is really feeling my overall comfort, and it truly starts with the legroom numbers. Now, what you're going to find is around about 42 inches of legroom up front. That compared to a very tight 33 inches in the back. But what I like is there is enough room to be able to move this forward just a hair, really allowing the backseat passengers to gain just a couple inches and that extra breathing room. But what I found is because the bench is actually so low, they can't actually translate that on paper. So what does it truly mean? My 6-foot+ frame actually fit in here quite nicely, even with a little bit of breathing room, and this seat back about as far back as it can go. On the interior was a very monochromatic overall color scheme with a bright polished black accent with leather wrap everywhere else. Now, right there front center is a nice touchscreen system you've seen across Nissan lineup for several years. Real easy to use, navigation buttons on the side, and real touch sensitive and barely an arm stretch away. Now, down below on this particular model, we did have dual climates. My right side passenger loved to heat it up while I kept it fairly cool. Of course, you do have the simple buttons in the middle for fan speed and a nice simple LCD readout for the gauge to be able to see what you're setting. All the various modes are down here as well, really making navigation and the overall look of the dash nice and simple. If you're looking for connectivity, look way down low below the dash in a little niche, and where you'll find is a little tray with USB connection and auxiliary jack and a power supply. Now, one thing to note, that's the only USB connection, so if you have more than one device, you may have to do rock, paper, scissors to see who gets it. Between the front seats, you will find a standard shift knob with a sport-like mode shifter there, and you can make this vehicle feel, well, a little more manual-like. Dual cup holders in between the front seats. Heated seats, which of course we don't need right now, but a nice area to stand your phone if you want to place it there. Now, one place to put a nice USB is in the center console, but there wasn't one. Now, I like this area for connectivity, but this didn't come with it, so you'll have to use the one up front. One feature I like with the Platinum Edition is right here on the steering wheel in regards to the radar-like cruise control. Now, that's some features that we've seen on a lot of vehicles, and it really allows the adaptive cruise control to handle this vehicle in heavy traffic and allow you to set the cruise and more or less forget about it. The vehicle can also set your space between the vehicle in front of you, allowing you to either tailgate or give a little bit of breathing room. Radio controls can be found right here on the left side of the steering wheel, making changes so much easier. Now, those quadrant buttons are used for the LCD in between the front gauges. Now, one thing to note, I'm a big fan of digital readout when it comes to your speed. The only thing you're going to find here is a standard analog tach and speedometer. One thing a lot of vehicles like to do is, well, hide those inconspicuous buttons where, well, no one can find them, and, well, Nissan does it here. And what you're going to see is way down low on the dash to the left is some spaces for various buttons. Specifically, what we had here is the heated steering wheel, the Econo button for your driving, and of course some other functions when it comes to traction control and parking assist. In some cases, you'll need to transition the back seat from people to cargo, and with that split design, it makes it so much easier. Now, what you're going to find is there is a handle positioned up here on the shoulder area. Simply pull that real easy, and it's going to tumble forward. Now, one thing to note is I did cheat just a little, moving the front seat back just a hair, giving a little bit more breathing room for that headrest. In some cases, when people are sitting there, it may be too far back, which means you're going to have to remove that before you lay it flat. Cup holders are nice in every vehicle, and you're definitely going to find two between both occupants in the front and in the back. But what you also find is some nice ones positioned here on the door. And what I like for me is that's a nice place to put trash instead of cluttering up your floor. Now, that does it for this edition of Road Warrior and our test drive behind the wheel of the 2017 Nissan Rogue Sport. Some things we like about this vehicle is specifically the overall design. It doesn't go too quirky, looks very grown up, and fits into the Nissan family quite well. After all, the Sport is really now the stepping stone into Nissan's SUV lineup, followed by the Rogue, of course the Murano, the Pathfinder, all the way up to the Armada. Nissan delivering a whole round table of options. Now, as always, I'd like to thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior. Keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.